Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dan Ball, and welcome to another episode of the Wellness Academy podcast. On my show here at the Wellness Academy, it is my job to distill all things wellness and attempt to break down from all of the different coaches, experts, and guests that I have their wisdom and knowledge so you can apply it to your own life. My guests, plural, today are Tim and Jacko, aka the legends behind School of Calisthenics. These guys were fantastically entertaining, fun, interesting gents to talk to. I'm not going to do a super long intro today. I'm just going to leave you guys to enjoy this one. A really fun time spent talking to them. I know you're going to enjoy it for sure. Let me know what you think, and as always, please like, subscribe, share, do all you can if you're willing to help me support the channel. I'll see you on the next one. Cool. So, gents, welcome to the Wellness Academy podcast. Thank you so very much for coming on. And mainly, thank you for making my podcast setup look so inadequate with this wonderfully professional setup that you guys have got going on. I feel brilliantly inferior, so thank you kindly for that. I obviously know who you guys are and have been following you off and on for quite a while now, but mainly due to one of your latest recruits, Georgie Gabriel. She was the one who was like, definitely message Jacko. Message him, he's a legend, he'll get back to you, and so on and so forth. But why don't you give a little bit of a background as to how you guys teamed up and what School of Calisthenics is, if anybody who's listening from my side of the coin isn't completely sure.
Well, we'll just kick off obviously by saying thank you so much for having us on the show, and don't be intimidated by our red, what are they called, Tim?
Pop protectors.
Pop protectors. But just a quick little bone to pick with you. You said you consume our stuff off and on.
Yeah,
like,
but
why are you
off?
Why is it off and on? Why is it not just on?
Because one of my questions, genuinely, to ask you, Georgie's been banging on recently to me about the benefits of calisthenics. I know you guys through her and because you work with Ian at Bulldog Gear, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a big CrossFit fan. But I think what I've probably done is the kind of thing that you guys have heard people say many a time before and got so excited trying to do things like muscle ups and so on. I don't do all of the stuff that you guys would recommend that people do, and I'm injured. Shock horror. So off and on, because the moment I start building some momentum with training, I normally end up with a niggle and then I stop.
Okay,
that's my
cool.
excuse anyway.
Yeah, that's we can delve into that a little bit later. So,
do you want later on when we get to that? Do you want real talk or not?
Tim will tell you
some real talk
how it is. Tim recently did a webinar that would be perfect for you on injury prevention.
That was softer compared to what I'm about to say.
Give it, you don't sugarcoat it, lads.
Well, yes, okay. Well,
Jacko, tell me about the background.
I'll try and go very quickly in a nutshell, but always struggle to do this quickly. So this voice that you're hearing now is Jacko, also known as David, which confuses people when they send Jacko an email and get a reply from David. But we started doing calisthenics ourselves 6 years ago. We'd met through a mutual friend of ours that I played rugby with that went to the same church as us, that introduced me to Tim because I was finishing playing rugby. I'd had a head injury that ended my career, and I was looking to get into the strength and conditioning world. Tim was a strength and conditioning coach working in Paralympic sport, and he connected us too. I then, I guess, went on a journey of tutelage under the master of Tim Stevenson, and started working with him in the Paralympic sport arena or area.
Cool.
So we've done. Tim's on his third Paralympic cycle for Tokyo. I'm on my second, and we still do some work in Paralympic sport. Tim can probably tell you a little bit more about that if that's of interest. But we started playing around with some calisthenics ourselves for potentially some similar reasons, some slightly different, but essentially I, for one, was bored. Like, once I didn't have rugby to train for anymore, I found that once I got over my head injury and was able to train again, always loved training, always loved lifting weights, resistance training, but it was always sort of very much weight based for rugby. And once I then didn't have that goal of a game at the end of the week, I found that my motivation, which I never had questioned ever in my life before, started to dwindle, and I was looking for something a little bit different, a little bit new, and we were sort of started playing around with calisthenics. So that was 6 years ago, and then we'd been sort of a couple of years into that. We went from being absolutely terrible, because if you imagine two broken old rugby players, Tim's dislocated his shoulder playing rugby more times than he can remember. I've got a broken shoulder blade in 2 places, a chromium and coracoid process, and dislocated AC that's never been repaired, because when you're playing rugby, you just carry on playing rather than get things repaired, if possible. So we came into it with no experience whatsoever in terms of like calisthenics or gymnastics, and so we were awful. But we were just having a bit of fun. We trained. It didn't matter. We were just playing around at the gym. No one else in our gym was doing it. We were sort of hanging off machines, trying to do things. There was not even any space to do it. But we were determined, at least, and
Enthusiastic.
Probably stupid.
Dangerous combination.
And once we got to the point that we could, like, hold on a minute, those 2 guys over there were doing human flags, and that people knew we were coaches, so they were like, well, will you teach me how to do that? And we were like, well, we're sort of doing all the one-on-one work we were doing as strength and conditioning coaches was in the Paralympic sport. And we were like, well, we'll put on a workshop, which we'd never done before. We was like, we'll put on a workshop and just, okay, let's try that. And the first one sold out, and it went really well. And we've got a video actually on YouTube. One of our first YouTube videos shows 7 weeks progress of the first people that ever did our workshop. And there's 3 lads do a human flag after 7 weeks, which is a bit mad. It took us a lot longer than 7 weeks to learn it, but the whole way through this, we've refined our own coaching process as we've experimented effectively on ourselves to then figure out how we can teach someone faster. It's been so interesting, the number of things that have come out of it, not just from a physical point of view, but from a mental point of view of how we're training now, what the end goal is, that it's not an aesthetics thing. We're training to learn a certain movement and to move in potentially a new way. Which has been very different to lifting weights, trying to hit numbers or trying to change the way we look or anything like that. And then physically, Tim has, since doing calisthenics, never dislocated his shoulder. And so there's been some huge positive benefits of that, which we've sort of had a lot of attention, I guess, in, let's call it like amateur sort of general population, but as well as the sports performance side of it, because bits that have worked really well effectively for shoulder robustness, shoulder health, we've then used that with athletes, and then that's grown a bit of traction. Then we've done,
I need some of that.
Yeah, so we like last year we did a workshop with Scotland Rugby with the physios and the strength and conditioning coaches there for sort of CPD thing for them, that was bridging this gap between like post rehab and getting back into actually playing. We spoke at the International Shoulder Conference in Liverpool at the end of last year, and there's 2 really. You can look at our stuff and you might come across it for the first time and just see Tim doing a cool handstand and go, that's a nice handstand picture. Or you may stay a little bit engaged and listen to some of the other stuff and go, okay, there's an awful lot more than this than just taking a cool picture of a human flag, although that is essentially why I started personally.
Let's it's a quick question, because it was one of the ones that I'd written down to ask, but I'm conscious that you guys are not tight for time, but we need to be strict with time and blah blah blah. The next seminar, when are you guys hosting events in and around, let's say, the middle of England, since I can be selfish and ask for myself rather than anyone that might be listening? When are you about?
So off the top of my head, 26th, depending on when this goes out, 26th of January, we're in Manchester.
Yeah.
1st of February, we're in Edinburgh, so that's not in the mid. Then we're Leicester on the 22nd
Mother's
of
Day.
March.
Yeah.
Okay, Leicester on the 22nd of March sounds great.
Yeah, there's Coventry in July, and then we're doing a coaches seminar, but that's a little bit further down south in Harpenden, sort of North London.
Yeah.
On the 3rd of May. We've got a couple of other workshops in London.
Did you say Coventry
February,
in July?
March, April. Coventry in July, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Because
people want to see them as well, as like all the details are on our website, schoolcalisthenics.com. You can find all of that.
Amazing. And the coaches seminar is strictly more directed towards the coaching of calisthenics rather than specifically just the training of calisthenics.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're looking, anybody can come, different practitioners, whether it's Pilates, PT, physio, anything really, but it's more looking at the understanding rationale, the theoretical process, and a structured and progressive approach to actually teach anything. We use obviously calisthenics practicals within that, but it's not as heavily practical as a workshop would be, which is literally all about moving and learning to sort of move in new ways.
I remember seeing some BTS on that because I follow Ollie March on across social media, and he was at your last one. And I was
we're doing, that's where the one in May, that's where we're doing it at his new place. We're excited to see his.
Okay. His new the gym looks incredible, doesn't it?
Yeah,
definitely. Okay, cool. So that's kind of a little bit of an idea about how you guys got into calisthenics. Out of curiosity as well, what made you then start a podcast?
Good question. The business started off very organically. We never really set out to have a school of calisthenics. It was we'd committed. We'd finished the we started in the build up towards the Rio 2016 cycle. We were both involved in prepping the athletes for the games. I was out in Rio and Brazil with the team. But our focus was around sports performance, and that's what we were committing towards doing for the next 4 years leading into this Tokyo cycle. As it happened, the sort of landscape changed a little bit, and we just started to want to start to scale and grow what we were doing with calisthenics. It was getting some great traction, really well received by people, and we were having a great time doing it, and we saw the opportunities. So we've always been very prevalent on social media, as anyone who's sort of followed us will probably know. And podcast was just another opportunity, another avenue to communicate with people, to get our message out, to bring other people to our audience that we thought they would benefit from hearing to. And it started off really, really organically. And again, we didn't have posh kit when we first started. We started off very, very with like one microphone, and we did it in a coffee shop once, and there's not great acoustics.
The very first one is
on YouTube. I think.
It's in a coffee shop. Yeah, we in terms of like the ins and outs of actually starting the podcast, we have always as we said, we're strength and conditioning coaches accredited with the UK Strength and Conditioning Association. Tim's got a master's in exercise physiology. We've always sort of pride ourselves on as coaches, on being coaches, and put out a lot of information about how to do these things, and therefore, I guess not automatically, but people then ask you questions. And we were doing Q&As on our YouTube. So we were getting Q&As from either Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, and then just answering them there. And then often I would get a series of questions and just like, wouldn't even tell, they would be straight off the bat, didn't even know what the question was going to be. And it was just like, the answer was just whatever was in his head. And that's how it started, that people were asking questions and we were answering them. Like we knew how difficult it was, as when we started, we were beginners, and we remember what it's like to be beginners. And some of this stuff looks really cool and looks really exciting to do. But at the minute that you get inspired by seeing, I remember seeing the first Frank Madrano video. It was like, wow. And just the way our mentality is, like, we were inspired, and then it was like, okay, we're going to go and do some of that. Whereas for a lot of people, I totally understand, because we still had that feeling a little bit as well. It was, you get inspired and then you go, oh, I could never do that though. And then actually never go and make that starting point. Yeah. So we have a lot of, we're heavily focused on beginners. We run beginners workshops. We've got a free beginners program, because we make that free because we want to take away the barriers for people to getting started. So
where's this free beginners program?
Again, on the website, schoolcalisthenics.com.
Yeah. I'll include that link.
You'll find everything. Cool. We can share you a direct link to that full page. Amazing. But yeah, that's free, and people can literally get started. There's no.
Do you remember? I feel like this guy was even more OG than Frank Madrano. Do you guys remember Hannibal the King?
Yeah, he's still going strong. Like literally, absolute machine.
I remember watching some of his first videos. You talk about not feeling where you could start. He'd be like, video 2, and I'm going to do tricep dip press ups hanging off these bars. I'm like, dude, that's like video 52, not video 2.
Yeah. You're like, hold on, who's turned the gravity off that guy?
It's insane.
He was amazing. Okay. And what, it sounds like, obviously, if if I was to take away the podcast from you guys, if I was to take away School of Calisthenics from you guys, you've both got a significant amount to do, and you've been working together for quite a while. Like, what's that team like between the two of you? What's that dynamic like, working together on a regular basis and stuff? Like, give us a bit of an insight into how you guys stay.
Well, we wake up in the morning. I normally wake up in the morning. I look over at him, give him a kiss on the cheek, and then go down and make coffee.
I'm always the big spoon. I'll give you. Let's get into some
we're going real
around this. Let's go real. But like things have changed a lot since it started. Like, we started off as mates and best mates, and we still are best mates. But it gets, the stresses of running a growing and scaling business are real. But we try and make sure that we look after each other quite well. We're very we know each other really well. I think we're very patient with each other. But it's we've always said that if School of Calisthenics is an international business and it's huge and it's all this massive amount of success, but then we're not mates at the end of it, then it's been a complete failure. So we're very much still invested in that relationship, because it's to us, the business isn't worth.
Hug it out, boys. Hug it out.
If you're not,
I'm a terrible hugger, so
this, listen to the podcast, find the YouTube video,
get on YouTube.
Watch the love being had right now.
But yeah, and that's the truth. There's other things. I don't know what it would look like immediately if what we would do, but we enjoy working together. We have a good time, and we try and create space to get away from the stresses that come with a business. And then that links into some of your stuff around the wellness of, like, yes, work is one thing that we do, but there's a lot of other stuff going on that we try to make sure that we're keeping checking as well.
Well, I know that Georgie and Ian they've always talked highly about the two of you. Like, always been good vibes, always good energy whenever they've mentioned your names. Like, I know that Ian's worked with so many people when it comes to Bulldog, and Georgie. I would go so far as to say is Georgie's one of, like, the kindest, most genuine people I think I know. Like,
yeah, she's great.
She's brilliant, and I don't believe that she would come and work School of Calisthenics just because she likes to do muscle ups and she's so amazing at yoga. Like, she wouldn't come on board if you guys weren't cool to work with. So we
were super excited when she wanted to join the coaching team.
I've told her she needs to come on my podcast, but she's not having it.
Yeah, exactly.
She told me she got.
We've had her on ours.
Yours. I know. I'm not having it. You wait.
I think with Ian at Bulldog, like a British brand, like, manufactures stuff in the UK, very high quality stuff. We started conversations, and then together designed the School of Calisthenics Bulldog rig, which was a product that didn't exist and filled a gap where we had one rig that my mate made us, that he just welded one together, that was just a bit of spit and sawdust. And we like answering people's questions. We were getting people going, "Where did you get that from?" It's like, well, my mate just can't stop making you. Like, we needed a proper solution for this, and when we partnered with Bulldog, it helped to. It was just two nice things coming together. Same with Georgie. Like, she's a fantastic coach. Wants to do coaching of calisthenics. We want great coaches on board, and I think these types of things work really well when it's like a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, man.
Me and Tim, we've only known each other 6 years, which is, it's potentially not that long. Sometimes you think it feels like, you feel like you've known someone sort of your whole life, but when friendship is built on, depending on what the foundation of what that's built on, we met during, for me, a very difficult period of my life, the darkest period of my life, where I was trying to deal with a head injury that then I retired from my job, and this guy helped me then start a new career. And it was a two-way thing, because the business that we were working, that I joined effectively, he needed someone with my skill set. But so we both were thankful for each other, and then I think that's why the friendship is if the friendship feels so much stronger than a 6-year thing. That makes sense.
Yeah. So conscious of thinking to myself, what is calisthenics, and because it's essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's a lot of body weight training, but there must be a reason why it's called calisthenics and not body weight training. Give me an idea of what because I'm definitely going to jump on this beginner program when I come off this call with you guys. Like I said, George has been championing it to me for weeks over Christmas, that it's something like that I should get involved. If I kind of frame it in three ways: one, what benefits would you expect me or anybody else who would go to that program to get? Two, what's it going to involve as a beginner? And three, how much of it can I do at home, combining with like my stretching routine I've got going on to try and improve my flexibility to look after myself physically, and how much will I have to do at the gym?
That's like 6 questions. Let me start at the top.
Good luck remembering
I'm
them.
going to answer one that you didn't even ask directly.
Cool.
Calisthenics comes from 2 Greek words, kalos and stenos, and it means beauty and strength. So that's the original term, and it comes, and ultimately it's down to trying to master your own body weight. Oftentimes in fitness and training, body weight will get labeled as beginners, sort of movements. That's what you do before you can do a bench press, which is not the case. Actually, body weight training is probably some of the most technical training you're going to need to do, especially when you start to progress it. But it is also super accessible, because you don't need a lot of equipment. Either my home gym setup is a pull-up bar and a set of rings, and I've got a weighted vest, which is pretty much my lot, and that's what I need. And you don't have to go to a gym to do it. You might want to, but it's not necessary. In terms of the benefits, I wrote a blog over the summer called "Why Calisthenics is the Greatest Form of Exercise," and it sounds like a very audacious statement, but the reality is there's probably few formats or types of exercise where you get the physical and mental benefits that you get in calisthenics. So yes, it's good for strength, it's good for mobility. If you want to do a good handstand or a really well controlled handstand, you're going to have great range of movement. You're going to have great control and strength at end ranges. You're going to have to link the whole kinetic chain together, and you're going to have to be strong if you go down some of the routes of handstand push-ups and some of the variations that we like. Same applies for muscle ups, human flags, whatever it might be. So you have to move well to do calisthenics. Back to your point at the beginning about some of the injuries that occur in CrossFit, because of the way that we do calisthenics, generally, that's everybody who does it, it's limited by your own ability. So you can't do a muscle up, for example, if you've got really grotty. You can't do a clean muscle up if you've got really grotty shoulder range of movement, because you can't transition into a good position. You can't do a really well controlled handstand if you haven't earned the right to go and do that through having a human movement system which moves really well. So that's the physical side. We tick a lot of boxes. You want to be strong, you want to move well, you want to be robust, you want stability. Yeah, we can do all that through calisthenics. And the level of intensity that we can get to, if someone thinks that bodyweight training is easy and they can do push-ups, well, start training towards a planche, and then you're going to start to find that actually the level of intensity and strength that you need is different level. It's way more there's way more in it to keep you interested than just adding an extra couple of biscuits onto a barbell once a week to try and improve your bench press, for example.
And there's nowhere to hide with it.
No, you can't.
Well, I think a good example of that is something that Ian was saying to me over the Christmas period. Like, if I go to my CrossFit class and I want to do a bar muscle up in a workout, I can maybe get away with it by chicken winging that bar muscle up and, damaging my shoulder. Or I can find, I'm one of them people that if I try an overhead squat versus squat, it doesn't go well. Do you know what I mean? Which I found out the moment I tried to do one arm kettlebell overhead squats. It's just not happening. But you can get away with lots of things. And what Ian was saying to me, I think, is what you guys are saying. If you try and do X, Y, Z in calisthenics and you can't do it, you can't do it. It's plain and simple. You have to build to get there.
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely. That's right. And then the other thing is that we talk a lot around is sort of mental well-being. So play is a big part of calisthenics, and just exploring movement, having fun with it. That was one of the biggest things that got us hooked. It was away from the years of what had become fairly repetitive and mundane barbell-based training. And we were having fun. We were just trying to move in new ways. We were teaching ourselves new things. There's a skill acquisition process. So not only does sort of the play make us happy, that's really good for us from a wellness perspective. That's the whole point of play. And there are no rules necessarily. We can be creative in how we move. There's no sort of set foundations of necessarily what you've got to do. we're also learning to move in a new way. So from a mental health perspective, or mental well-being, we're creating new neural circuitry by exploring this physical potential that we have. So if you can't do a handstand, teaching yourself to do that, and the skill acquisition process that you're going through is going to be like absolute fertilizer for your neural system in terms of keeping it sharp and awake and train the brain just like you would train a muscle in the body. So from a longevity perspective there's some really good research around things like dementia and Alzheimer's being limited, or their onset being reduced as a result of continually teaching the brain to learn to move or to learn new skills and that sort of thing. So, and then the last one, the point on that was the other benefit is around growth mindset. So our strapline is redefine your impossible. Everything felt impossible to Jack and I when we first started. Human flag, I thought I was going to dislocate my shoulder. I remember first trying to planche and was like, mate, that is impossible. How do you even produce force in that position?
Yeah.
But through the training process, you go on and you break it down, and then all of a sudden there'll be that glimmer of hope one day where it feels like, do you know what? I might actually get this. And you'll nail it, and you'll do your first human flag, and you've just done something which you didn't think you could do. That's huge. And yes, there's those opportunities in things like CrossFit and powerlifting and whatever else where you want to go and deadlift but 2 times body weight, and those things are all like perfectly acceptable and great things to go and chase after. Our argument with calisthenics is the package that you get as a result of all of it. So yes, there's a growth mindset in powerlifting, but do you get the skill acquisition as much as you do in calisthenics? Probably not, because it's mostly the same things on a repetitive basis.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that growth mindset that Tim mentioned there at the end is the perfect answer to the bit that you said just before, saying if in calisthenics you can't do X, Y, Z, you just can't do it. That was what you said, and I wanted to always stop the conversation there, because you can't do it then. But that's the whole point. Is that then you then follow a process and you then work through that, and then you understand that, okay, I just redefined my impossible. It maybe took me X number of days, weeks, months, whatever, it doesn't matter. But just because you can't do it now isn't the reason to stop. Because I just thought if someone's listening that's never sort of come across this before, goes, just hears that, goes, oh, well, what's the point in me even starting?
my
the point. At the start,
was,
the start is supposed to be impossible. It's supposed to be hard at the start. The satisfaction when you do that, but when it was really, really difficult, is far greater than, I could do that thing, just figured out that I could already do it. You haven't actually earned that and gone through all the frustrations that you do with some of these things.
I think Ian's context,
really
which I was then sort of referring, was in CrossFit, and I can speak for myself on this, there are things which I shouldn't have really been doing, but I could do them. Because I could gain, what's the word I'm looking for? Parts of my body could supplement it when they shouldn't be. Whereas there are certain things just find a submaximal way to injury get the outcome. Perspective, it's a good thing that in calisthenics, if you can't do something at that moment, you can't do it, because you're not going to round your back in a deadlift, for example, and you are going to pull those extra 5 kilos off the floor. But really, in terms of longevity and health and looking after your body, you probably shouldn't have lifted it. If that makes sense.
We're meeting more and more CrossFit coaches now that are recognizing the importance of teaching a strict bar muscle up before a kipping bar muscle up. And you can see the relevance or how significant that is when the CrossFit Games got absolutely leveled a couple of years ago, when they introduced strict handstand push-ups and strict muscle-ups. Like, people were literally elite level competitors going, I'm not doing that. Can't do strict.
I think that there was a version of the CrossFit workout Nate, wasn't there? I think that was at the regionals, and all of a sudden people who can do muscle ups couldn't do muscle ups.
Yeah, just passed on that section of the workout. So, and there is that thing of like, unless you've got the ability to control a well controlled ring muscle up, where the shoulder is actually being stabilized through that motion, you would arguably think that it's not the greatest idea to go and do kipping ring muscle ups just to get the end point destination. And lots of people get away with it, but lots of people don't as well. So I'm not anti CrossFit, but I think it's done some great things for the health and fitness
100%
industry. I do think there's the logical progression of how you would teach those skills. It's you could apply the same sort of principle to Olympic lift, super technical lift, but you don't go and try and do something before you've actually earned the right to learn to lift efficiently and correctly.
Yeah, it's not whether something's right or wrong, whether CrossFit or calisthenics or anything is right or wrong. It's whether we're pro moving well, and against moving badly. So if you come and do calisthenics really badly, it's going to look really awful. It's not going to be beautiful strength. It's not going to be callus and stenos, and you probably could end up injured as well. But the same as anything, like I can get injured doing anything if I do it wrong.
Yeah, even getting up out of this chair when I leave this interview if I do it wrong.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to, you mentioned about fitting stuff in with your flexibility or mobility routine that you're trying to do potentially at the moment, and it's a question we had. It comes up quite often. By means of all of our sessions and our programs start with movement preparation work, which is preparing the body for the session we're about to do. So we're trying to restore range of motion and postural control of whatever the shapes we're trying to make for the session we're about to do. And then we try and make sure that we train through those ranges that we're trying to create, so that we're, by training efficiently and effectively, we're helping restore some of that. Now, that's not to say that you might have to do a little bit more like shoulder mobility work if they're particularly jacked up for whatever other things you've done previously in your life, but it needs to be, we're trying to encourage people to think less of these things as like separate, and how actually is it integrated together. That's what we do with our programs. We integrate them in together. Like cool. There's a nice example now of like, we're standing up doing this podcast and you're sat down.
Yeah.
So you're teaching your brain and your body and your human movement system, your coaching, you're currently reinforcing how efficient it needs to be to sit down. And so you're then gonna try and do some mobility for half an hour later, but you might have spent 5 hours sat down today. And it's how some things is like, how can I start to integrate just everything into my everyday life, to rather than thinking of mobility as this, I'll do mobility on a Wednesday and I do five-a-side football on a Thursday and I do this other thing on another day. It's not really how it works.
Yeah. So things like, that's why standing desks are a thing now, which is, to be fair, it's on my investment list for what I would like my ideal little podcast studio to be.
Let's be honest. This is Tim's dining room table. This is no standing desk.
Wait, next time you come around, you're going to standing dinner. That's what I'm going to get. You'll be standing up to it.
That's not good for me. Rest digest system.
Exactly. So what I was going to do then, gents, is like a wrap-up question, because it's something that you mentioned which I wasn't aware of before we started talking to one another today. Can you give us an idea then of how you've taken the same principles that will be in this beginner program that I'm going to be downloading, and I'm going to be encouraging people to download after this? It sounds like the same things that are in that, albeit probably more difficult perhaps, you've been coaching Paralympic athletes with. That sounds amazing. I didn't know you guys coached Paralympians. Can you spare us 5 minutes before we kind of wrap things up to talk about that?
Yeah, of course. Tim, talk about the framework.
Yeah, for sure. So where to start with that one? The principles of, so my strength and conditioning career started in university sport largely, and at the same time I was starting to work with a Paralympic athlete in Nottingham, and I think I've probably coached coached athletes from over 30 different sports, because in a university setting you just get exposure to so many different things. So golf, wakeboarding, traditional hockey, cricket, netball, all that sort of stuff. So my approach has always been about coaching movement. So if you understand movement and you understand the associated functional anatomy that goes with it, then doesn't matter what the sport is, it's just how that body is being, what the sport just dictates how that body needs to move effectively, or it provides some context for how we might want to move. So if you understand that, then you can literally move in any way that you want to move. You just need to understand the biomechanics of the functional anatomy. So when we came to Paralympic sport, one thing that's really interesting about that is it's a less than perfect environment. So we did some work. We led the British swimming, para swimming team into the games, and we would have 7-10 athletes in the gym at any one time. We might have a leg amputee, an arm amputee, a visual impairment, an intellectual impairment, range of different things. And what Paralympic sport forces you to do is be quite dynamic with the training environment. You have to think about how you're going to adapt exercises to get a performance or a movement-based outcome, which is going to then transfer into the sport which we are working in, which was swimming at the time. So when we came to calisthenics, we looked at it in the same way. I've got a shoulder which was liable to dislocating. So we just went back to the movement and said, well, what do you actually need to have to do a human flag? And we broke it down, understanding what we knew from movement, from the anatomy, from exercise prescription. And we just said, well, these are things that you need to be able to do. If you can do those things, there's no reason why you can't do a human flag, you just need to link it through together. So some of that would be, we have a framework which we produced off the back of that, which is centered on 2 pillars: movement on one side and strength on the other side. Movement should be beautiful, so it's staying true to the original meaning of what calisthenics is all about. So on the movement side of the framework, we have a phase called movement preparation, which is effectively preparing your body for the session you're about to do. We all arrive at a session and we'll have sat in a car, we've been sat in front of a computer, we've got previous injuries, all that sort of stuff. That needs undoing, because if you want to go into a handstand but you've been hunched over a laptop all day, your system's not primed for that session. So we've got to take positive action to try and get back to as close a postural optimum as we can. The second part of it is movement patterning. Effectively, if you want to do a human flag, you probably don't know how to push and pull maximally overhead at the same time, because we never train it in any other movement. So we've got to do something which creates an environment to allow the brain to learn how to do that movement, but it can't be under high intensity. It needs to be patterning. It's a skill acquisition phase. And then we jump onto the other side of the framework, which is then applied strength. That's strength which is specific to the movement we're trying to learn. So in a human flag, we just need to get really, really strong in a single arm active hang. So we'll put that in with the applied strength. Okay. And then our capacity strength section is about just a global foundation of body weight strength: pull-ups, push-ups, dips, and variations of. And it's to wrap that up, I still do some work with some wheelchair racers, and we use now quite a bit of calisthenics with the swimmers, with wheelchair racers. Jacko's still training track sprinter. Because of the importance and the significance of calisthenics in terms of training the whole kinetic chain, those are things which are just good for movement. So we'll include calisthenics exercises because it's a really scalable kinetic chain approach to movement, rather than going, let's get chest stronger. Well, in a wheelchair, chest is a component, but being able to stabilize the hip and the pelvis, or the pelvis and the spine, the shoulder at the same time, that's a kinetic chain function. And we can get more of that through doing maybe a planche type progression than we will do just from being able to push more weight. So it goes back to the simple principle of, rather than thinking about how much force you can apply, I'm more interested in how effectively you can apply that force.
Okay. Amazing.
Short answer.
Yeah, right. Like, gents, that was incredible.
Just further than that, like specifically to like the beginner thing. Well, that then just scales all the way down, and it can scale all the way back up. But yeah, as I say, to reiterate for anyone that is potentially a beginner and interested in some of those many benefits Tim talked about before, that don't be put off. We've been there. We've scaled it down, broken it down, and you've got all the tools to get started in that free beginners program.
And that beginner program is going to take what is essentially many, many, many hours of looking foolish in the gym when no one did calisthenics into something that we can all work on at home or wherever that may be. Right?
There might be no one at your gym that is doing it either, and
there will be nobody doing what I'm going to be giving a go in my gym where I live. I can promise you that. Which
mentally that can be a bit of a challenge, because people we're so self-conscious these days about what it is like to be in the gym. And for me, I think that's try to encourage people to go like, well, if you can stop worrying about how you look when you're training in the gym, or maybe you also stop worrying about these other things that go on in your head to do with sort of, that are going to affect your social well-being.
Gents, I'm sure there's going to be an opportunity in the future for a round 2, but I believe that is where we 100%. Need to wrap things up today. So once again, genuinely, thank you so much for taking the time out to come on. I really appreciate it. And normally wrap things up with, let everybody know where the best place is to stay in touch with you are. We've touched on it, but now we're at the end. Where should people stay in touch with both of you guys respectively?
So on Instagram is probably one, in terms of social media channels, are probably biggest, most engaged one. So that's School of Calisthenics, and we're the same on any social media platform, but Instagram is a good place to find us. And then all the information and all the programs and everything, workshops, classes, whatever it may be, is on schoolofcalisthenics.com. And
I'll get the direct link to that beginners program from your kind of post interview, and I can include that in the show notes below.
Yeah, we'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Gents, amazing. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Class dismissed.